Hey everyone, good afternoon. My name is Travis Lenkner, and I want to welcome you all to the K-State Alumni Association's first ever virtual event and the first of a series of events that they're calling our Wildcat Chat. It is great to have so many of you with us this afternoon and more people who will even be able to access this program online and see the content later. But right now you're joining hundreds of K-State alumni and friends who share an interest in learning more about what is going on these days at Kansas State University. And we had around 500 people who had registered to join us, and I know more will be signing on over the course of the afternoon, as I said, as well as viewing this later. So it's great to have everybody here. Thank you so much. We have a great group of people with us today. You couldn't really ask for anyone else to be here to tell you what's going on at K-State. President Richard Myers, the president, of course, of Kansas State. All these folks need no introduction, but I'm going to give it my 30-second best. General Myers, obviously the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and started serving K-State as the interim president in 2016, and then was named president also in 2016. Chuck Tabor, the provost of K-State, who joined in 2018, is with us as well. And also Amy Button-Renz, the president and CEO of the K-State Alumni Association. So a well-rounded group of people who could answer any possible question that we can throw their way over the next hour or so. And we do have questions. We have questions that were submitted in advance from a lot of you who registered, and we'll be asking those. We also are taking more questions as we're all here together. So if you have a question that comes up that you want to ask, please just type that into the YouTube chat function, and we'll be seeing those as well as they come up throughout the course of the hour. So just briefly, why are we here? Why are we all here virtually and not getting together? Of course, COVID-19 has led, I think, to the creation of some of these virtual events, as well as to a lot of what we're going to be discussing today. And just to rewind a little bit and take everybody through the calendar of the last few months, really at the outset of the coronavirus pandemic, we started seeing news reports in early March, late February and early March. The university began remote-only classes in mid-March. Big 12 tournament canceled, other athletic competitions for the rest of the spring canceled. And then in the state of Kansas, a stay-at-home order that went into effect in late March until early May. And K-State, with some various announcements over the course of the spring and summer, has extended limited operations until July 31st. So here we are in early June, thinking ahead toward the fall and academics, athletics, and wanting to know about how all of these global events affect our alma mater. So I will defer to the masses. I have some academic questions, but President Myers, you can probably imagine the most common question received has to do with something else, which is what can we expect from K-State football this fall? I know Gene Taylor, the athletic director, has not yet released the official decision, but I know K-State is working to get word to fans as soon as something is decided and as soon as there is a formal plan. But what can you tell us right now about what K-Staters can expect from the football season this fall?
Well, thanks, Travis, and thank you for hosting this, and thank you, Amy Button-Renz and the Alumni Association, and my colleague Chuck Tabor, our provost and senior vice president, for joining us. One thing first, I think the alumni ought to be proud of the role that Kansas State played in this state in mid-March for deciding not to have students return to campus. We did this at the same time that KU did it, essentially, and we had not coordinated all of that particularly, but we both were looking at the data since January. And it was pretty clear from the data that this virus was going to continue to spread, and that creating a hotspot after spring break when students come back from all around the world would not be a good idea. So you ought to be proud of the fact that we led and actually had to convince, I think, state health authorities this was the right action. In about 3 minutes after we made the decision, the state health authority said, "This is brilliant. We're going to follow your lead." And I sort of started all the state activity, I would say. So we got criticism initially from the state, and then they said, "Nope, you're doing it right." So you ought to be I think, proud of the team that we had working that, as did KU. So we came to that conclusion at the same time. Football. So the plan is that we're going to have football this fall. That's the plan. Like everything we're going to say today about the future, there's a big bubble of uncertainty around those plans. And the virus is going to have a vote, probably the primary vote, and how well we can carry out these plans that we're going to talk to you about. But the plan is to have football. The plan right now is to have it with fans. Gene Taylor will announce later what percentage of our stadium we would want to fill under these conditions, all the other things that go with that. Students, athletes for football return here in about 5 days, or they can begin voluntary workouts in 5 days. There is a very, very detailed protocol that student athletes and coaches and staff will follow as we bring things back to life in the athletic complex. It is driven by the latest guidance we can get from the CDC, from the state, from our county, which we get really good guidance from Raleigh County. We've been very pleased with that, and our own health officials at Lafayette. The head doctor at Lafayette is also the chair of the Big 12 team doctors in terms of leading that group. And they've been very helpful in helping the Big 12 figure out dates and how we're going to do this. So that's our plan. It could be disrupted. It depends on all the other football conferences to go along with that, because our first 3 games are out of conference games. So there's a lot, like I said, a lot of uncertainty, but the good news is we're planning for that. And our first game, as you might know, is September 5th. So Travis, that's my update.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you very much. And it's football. We have questions about other university related events as well. And I think we're gonna round out these questions with talking a little bit about the academic calendar. But Amy, turning first to you for a second and sticking with the theme of other events, there are generally in the summer a host of things that the Alumni Association is doing across the state of Kansas and across the country. Catbacker events, other alumni club events over the course of the summer. How has the association responded, and what are you all seeing in terms of plans going forward for this summer and fall?
Well, our staff has been resilient, and the first line of work that we had to do is, once we knew we were closing until August 1st, is to start canceling events. The Alumni Center had 107 events that had to be canceled, and thankfully many of those are being rescheduled, including a few weddings. We also had an Alumni Fellows program that was to take place in April, where we were going to honor outstanding graduates. And what we have done with that particular event is just moved all of those award recipients forward to next year. We have a lot of awards recognition ceremonies that we do every year in the spring to honor outstanding students, international students, multicultural students, student leaders. And we were able to actually celebrate all of those, but it was all done virtually. We are doing a lot with social media, and the staff has really done a good job of being able to focus on all of those undergraduate and graduate students in the K-Stater magazine. When you look across the country, we really had no choice, but everything needed to be canceled. And our first in-person event, assuming everything works out, will be in Ottawa, Kansas in August. And Thomas Lane, our Vice President for Student Life, is going to be the featured speaker at that event. And I know because he deals with students, there will be a lot of questions for him, because we will be inviting parents and students. All of the scholarships that we would normally have awarded during the summer, the scholarship dollars that we would award were still awarded. We worked with financial aid to make sure that that happened, and that was about $35,000. We were able to honor our outstanding graduates, even though it wasn't in person. The staff really went to work on coming up with a lot of new ways to honor them. And we utilized social media, Instagram. We had a virtual singing of the alma mater the same day of commencement. And we're just looking forward to celebrating with our May graduates when we celebrate our December graduates. And I know that date hasn't been set, but once it is set, we will go to work making sure everybody knows. And the future is going to look different. we know there will probably be a combination of in-person events as well as virtual. And Travis, you served as the former chair of the Alumni Board of Directors. We had our first virtual alumni board meeting last week, and it works very well, but I think everybody really misses being in person. So we'll have to remain nimble, and our staff is ready for that. And we know that our next virtual Wildcat chat is going to be with Thomas Lane. I think there'll be a lot of parents and students that will be very interested in hearing from him, and that'll be taking place in a couple of weeks. But things are going well. It's just different, but we are really happy that we can be a part of the decisions that are being made on campus, and very much appreciate President Myers and Provost Tabor's leadership. I have never been more impressed with two people that are up to handle a crisis and a challenge, and they're leading our university in great ways.
That's great. Well, Amy, I was going to give you first prize so far for best K-State background because you have the pillow on the sofa and everything. But President Myers has First Lady Mary Jo Myers in his K-State background, so I think he wins. I just noticed that. So hello to her as well. So you're in second now, unfortunately, but I think
that's fine.
It's a deserved first place for him. And I want to transition to Provost Tabor now to talk, more directly about students and what is going on campus. I know people are curious about what's happening on campus this summer, as well as plans for the fall, for classes and for group living. And I know you're just out, I think this week, with announcements on changes to the academic calendar. So that's obviously a lot of ground to cover, but Provost Tabor, thanks for joining us, and we'll just turn it over to you to sort of tell everybody where we are on campus academically for the summer and fall.
Thanks, Travis. Yes, and we've been planning for this for the last month, but as you can imagine, this is a monumental task to plan for the return of the entire campus to some form of in-person presence in the fall. We're going to have in-person classes starting in the fall, and we've made the decision that we're going to move the fall semester up by 1 week. So the fall semester will start August 17th, Monday, August 17th. The reason for this is that will enable us to end our in-person classes with the Thanksgiving break. So students will still get the week off at Thanksgiving. And now, instead of coming back to campus and therefore really going through 3 travels, leaving campus, coming back, and then going home again just a couple of weeks later, we're going to limit it to 1 travel. We think that's best for the community, best for the students, best for their families. So after the Thanksgiving break, we'll have 1 week of instruction left, what we call dead week, and then finals week will be held remotely as well. So those will both be remote. Now, in terms of the summer, as Amy said, we've canceled virtually all summer events. In terms of face-to-face, replaced many of them with virtual events. So for example, our orientation and enrollment, which is so important to the university, it's how we yield students, how we get students excited about coming to K-State in the fall, their families as well. Orientation and enrollment events have been going on virtually through the summer. Karen Goose and her team. Karen is new, by the way, to K-State, but she's already been just a tremendous leader for us in leading the enrollment management group. And she and her team have met with families in several large town halls. They've answered questions. They've also been dispensing the CARES Act funding that you probably know is available for our students who are in the greatest need right now. So this has been a very, very busy period, but all of this activity has been virtual.
And just as a quick follow-up, for people who are trying to envision what classes look like when they do start on August 14th, or, I think everybody of the vintages of people who are in this group can tell some probably residence hall group living stories that involve a lot closer contact than we're supposed to have with people right now. So how are you, how is the university, once it's back, quote unquote, in mid-August, what does a lecture class look like? What does Moore Hall look like when people are trying to envision that compared to the experience that they would have had when they were students?
Yeah, so the answer is really flexibility. So we're offering a variety of flexible options for faculty and colleges to choose in delivering courses this fall. So there will be some classes that will be offered almost entirely face-to-face. That will be the majority of classes will be offered almost entirely face-to-face. I say almost because we are going to require that every class have some online component as part of the class. They have to have an active Canvas page. They have to be interacting with students in an online way, even the face-to-face classes. And the reason for that is just in case we do have to pivot and move online, we'll be in a much better place to do that in the fall. We don't anticipate that, but we do need to plan for it. So the majority of our classes will be like that. They'll be face-to-face with a very small online component. There will then be some classes that are hybrid. So they're offered partially online and partially face-to-face. One version of that will be some classes will be offered in a split format where half of the students will be in the classroom on Tuesday, the other half viewing it on Zoom, and then they flip on Thursday. And that'll give all students a significant face-to-face experience, but allow us to reduce the number of students in the classroom. So we're in the process of evaluating all of our classroom space on campus for what we're calling its COVID capacity. That's the number of students that the classroom can safely hold while doing social distancing. We are going to require that students and faculty wear face coverings in classes in the fall. The classes, there will be also, so the first set are online, the second set are mixed, and the third set, there will be a number of classes that will be online entirely. And we're offering that option both because we have some students that want to take most of their classes online. And we also have some faculty who either for health reasons or because they have underlying conditions, they will choose to teach online in the fall to remain safe. So really, again, the answer is it's going to be a very flexible experience, but we're planning for a really great high impact semester for students.
And as you said, having everything at least have some form of online component does allow a shift if a shift should be necessary. And I guess President Myers, you said before the virus gets a vote and maybe the primary vote in some of these, or really all of these decisions. So how do you think about the plans? How much planning can you do in advance in case there is a resurgence, a wave 2, whatever you want to call it, that would put you back in the place you were in March and having to make that decision potentially again sometime during the fall semester?
Well, thank you, Travis. Well, you can do a lot of planning. You can develop plan A, plan B, C, how many you want, backup plans for contingencies. But, you mentioned housing and dining. So we just announced housing and dining, in fact, our academic calendar for this fall, I think on Monday. And so that's out there now. It's on the K-State website. People can look at more detail. But Dr. Thomas Lane, our Vice President of Students, has thought through that, I think, very thoroughly with his leadership and team. And we have a plan for all the residence halls. We are going to allow 2-person rooms. We'll allow a 1-person room if somebody needs that for medical reasons. If they just want it for other reasons, then they're going to pay double for that room. And then we're going to set aside one of the halls, Van Zyl. I think it has 68 beds. We're going to set aside if we have to quarantine anybody that either has it or has been exposed. And we hope that's enough. If it's not enough, we'll have to go somewhere else and lease some space. But that's what we're thinking about doing. So barring a huge outbreak that would threaten the rest of our community here in Manhattan, I think we're ready for some increase in cases, which you would expect when a lot of people get together. And we have contingencies for that, even down to the point where we're spending quite a bit of money to put these hydrogen peroxide machines in the individual residence hall rooms that knock out both bacteria and viruses. They've been proven effective. It's just expensive, but we're going to do that. We already use them in some of the larger spaces in athletics and on campus. But so we're trying to take all the precautions we can. And Chuck Tabor mentioned one of them: social distancing, face mask, washing your hands are the known things you can do to stop the spread of the virus. Those are known and espoused by the CDC and every medical professional. So we're gonna do that. And I know it won't be comfortable for some people, but that's what we're gonna do. So we're gonna try to, again, Dr. Tabor talked about it. Flexibility is our key to success here. And we're going to try to be as flexible as we can. Is it possible we might have to flip all the way to online and distance? Yes, it's possible. Again, that'll be decided by the numbers we see in the cases, in which direction the number of cases is going up or down, how many of them, that sort of thing. And, you know, some would say, well, our student population's young, they're healthy. Yeah, but it even affects the young and presumably healthy in ways that we don't fully understand yet. So we don't want to put anybody at risk. Young, people with underlying conditions, older folks, whatever. And then it goes right to the community, right? Because a lot of our students live in this community. And we have to take that very seriously as well. So we'll do all this in conjunction with Riley County Health Department and with the state and following the CDC guidelines as things evolve going through the fall.
So let me ask a quick follow-up of you that I will go in with the disclaimer in advance. I know this has no good answer, but just curious. It's you can, as you said, you can plan for so many contingencies, and you can do all the things that you're all describing to change classroom capacities and the way you deliver instruction. But so much depends, starting on August 14th, on students and how they behave and how much of this they are up for, I guess, for lack of a better term. And it departs so much from what we know of the traditional college experience. How do you message that? How do student life folks think about getting everybody on the team to be part of a different way that K-State is going to look on campus for them when they come back in the fall?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because Dr. Lane has come up with a campaign, and I'm not going to talk about it right now, but it'll come out here pretty quickly, about wellness. And we think it has some phrasing and so forth that'll be catchy. And then we're going to train. We're going to have required training for everybody. And then when people come on campus, not just students, not just faculty and staff, but anybody visiting this campus is going to have to comply with our protocol. And our protocol is going to be social distancing, a face mask. Even when social distancing, in some places where you can social distance, you may be in an environment like a classroom where you might have six foot distance, but you're talking loudly or you're singing or whatever. We know the louder you talk, singing in particular, you can spread these droplets, and we know it spreads through that for sure. That's the one thing everybody agrees on. So we're gonna have protocols in place to hopefully stop the spread while they're on campus. Of course, we can't control behavior afterwards, after they go off campus. And I imagine I'm gonna dread the first drive-through, which I do from time to time down Morrill Street in Aggieville. I'm gonna dread that because I know what I'm gonna see. And that's okay because we can't stop it. But we hope the businesses will help with this because it's in their best interest that we don't go back to online. They've been complaining now for 4 months, there's nobody around and their businesses are failing. Well, the way to guarantee that is let's get another surge, get cases going up, and we send everybody home again. And so it's in their best interest too. So we hope everybody will be mature about this and pick the right course. But in the end, when they come on campus, our goal there is to prevent the spread from those that are carrying but maybe asymptomatic. And so that's the best we can do, Travis. Like you said, there's not a perfect answer, but there are a lot of good answers.
Sure. Well, Provost Tabor, the president talking about a lot of, already putting into action lessons learned and solutions going forward that wouldn't have been in place in February and March when this was all so immediate. What have we already learned from this pandemic experience? And I guess hearing you talk about the changes in the classrooms in particular, just what do you see going forward? This is like a catalyst for just a permanent shift in educational delivery. And 2 years from now, when there's a vaccine and this doesn't exist anymore and it's like nothing ever happened, it won't be the same. And so, what have we learned and what do you think is different in a more permanent way going forward?
Yeah, that's something we've been talking about a lot. The most important thing we've learned, and Amy used this word earlier, is how resilient our students, faculty, and staff are. It's actually been remarkable. When you think about looking backwards for just a moment before I go to the forward-looking part of the question, when we think about the faculty and staff of the university taking our entire educational operation online in the course of a week. Just think about that. That's just amazing. And you think about all of our students learning how to take online classes and functioning effectively in an online space unexpectedly in the fall semester. It just showed tremendous resilience. And quite frankly, this generation, this group of college students is going to be looking back on this for the rest of their lives as this being the great challenge of their youth that they overcame. So we learned a lot about ourselves through this. Now, in terms of looking forward, I think you're absolutely right, Travis, and this was happening before COVID. There was already a shift in higher education towards greater flexibility, more modes of delivery, serving different types of students, non-traditional students, lifelong learners, lots of different, connections with industry. All of these things were already underway in higher education. And in a very real way, what the COVID pandemic has done is accelerate the change that we saw underway. And I think it did so because faculty across the country, not just at K-State, but certainly at K-State, faculty have now experience with doing something they haven't done before. And they've had a taste of it. And we don't want to mistake the great work they did for a fully planned online or hybrid course. But with that taste, I think a lot of our faculty are excited about learning how to use technology to be able to teach more effectively. Because in fact, if you think about hybrid education in particular, right now that's the cutting edge of higher education. The research shows that the most effective way of teaching today is to have elements that are delivered through distance virtually. For example, the idea of a flipped classroom, people have talked about a lot. It's where you deliver the lecture content, virtually, and then the students come back and you can have much more time focused on the intensive discussion of the materials that were discussed in a lecture. So just the overall answer is I think we're seeing a real acceleration of the fundamental shifts in higher education that were already underway. And, in even 3 years from now, we will see universities, and certainly K-State will be at the forefront, that will be using technology in ways that were never imagined before.
Yeah,
Travis, let me just chime in for a minute, because as we refresh our 2025 vision, I think most of the folks on the phone probably at least have heard of it, but that guides our future strategic direction and priorities. We've got 4 initiatives that we're going to start, and one of them is around innovation and education. How we deliver content, and drilling down into the classroom and the various modes of learning, but also to become the second one, or 4 of them. One of them is also we want to become a cyber land grant, which is the use of technology in our 3 mission areas of teaching, research, and outreach. So we worked on that last fall before we knew much about coronavirus. And it's going to fit in real well, because those strategies are going to help us, and now we're better informed at this point to the future, where we think our future lies. So, and that's a lot of that work we credit Chuck with that, at least leading the team.
I have a great team.
That's great, and it's changing across the board. I know at the university and in so many ways, and Amy, that includes not just current students, but also alumni and former students and friends. What's happening at the association on a membership level, and not only ways to reach out to new members, but also event planning and the sorts of things that we're doing here by all of us getting together. What does the future, both as we get through the pandemic, but also emerge from it, look like at the Alumni Association?
Well, I'd like to start maybe by talking about our recent graduates from May, because it's going to be very important for us to celebrate with them. And at commencement time, we would have been announcing to each college and the graduate school that they were going to receive a one-year membership in the Alumni Association that was sponsored by the association and their college. That's going to continue, but they didn't hear that personally. Now, thanks to a video and other communication pieces, we've been able to share that with them, but it's going to be very important to continue to connect with them and provide that lifelong experience, that link for life. As it relates to membership, we still continue to be the #1 association in the Big 12. If you look at the percentage of graduates that are members, and we're in the top 5 for large publics across the country. And we want to continue that. And we made a decision last fall to move forward with an all university directory project. They're very time intensive, require a lot of work from our staff and our partner. But what has been truly amazing over the last several months, we have had 1,620 new members join the association. In these times, that's phenomenal. It shows that our membership base is very strong, will continue to be strong with those additional members. And as Kendall Frazier, our past board chair, said, we're a membership organization, and that's very important because our members have a voice. And it's important to continue to have that voice with campus and to be supportive. And I am so proud of Tim Schrog and the K-Stater Magazine staff for the incredible K-Stater Magazine that was recently sent to all of our members. It was all about COVID-19, had personal comments from the president, the provost, Thomas Lane, Jeff Morris, our VP for communications and marketing. And we felt it was important to tell the story of what's been happening because the Alumni Association is really the keeper of traditions. And even though I wouldn't consider the COVID-19 a tradition, it's something that happened and we will always remember. And they did an incredible job. And we have received so many positive comments. And instead of ignoring that it was happening, we hit it head on. And when you look at the K-Stater Magazine and you see empty parking lots and empty classrooms, it really does hit home how much of an impact this has had. And the good thing will be is I think we're in the process of, we just redid our strategic plan with our board of directors. And the strategic plan looks a little different than it would have done. It would have looked like 6 months ago. And we just recognize that we're going to have to be more nimble. And the virtual piece, I think, is here to stay. And I think what the provost said, I mean, I don't know that every event will have a virtual component like a classroom would have, but I think we're going to have to be able to realize that that's going to be very important for us moving forward. And I think it'll be a very new way for us to even communicate more frequently with our international alumni. It's going to be important to just reach out to everybody, but the team's excited. We just need to continue to look at different ways to approach things. And one other individual that we have asked to lead one of these chats, Wildcat chats, is a 1976 graduate, Vicki James, and she's going to talk about personal health for yourself and your family. Well, that ties right into what Dr. Lane is wanting to do with our students and their families. So, and we would welcome any suggestions for topics or speakers from those that are participating today. And all they have to do is send that in and we'll look into it and see if that's a possibility because we know there's a lot of topics out there that people will be interested in.
Yeah, that welcoming, not only welcoming topics for future events, as well as I will put one more plug in for questions for this event. We have a bunch, but if you have any you want to submit, you can do that through the chat window in YouTube while you're watching right now. President Myers, one way, Amy's talking about having more Alumni Association members. The best way to do that is to have more K-State students. So what can we talk about, obviously in the midst of all this, enrollment wise, what has the university's approach been in the midst of COVID-19 to thinking about enrollment for the fall and how that affects obviously all the planning and everything else that you're doing?
Well, great question, Travis, and I assume everybody on this call is very interested in this. And I'll start, and then Chuck, if you don't mind, you can follow up. But the big picture is, as you know, for the last year, we've been implementing a strategic enrollment management plan that came out of a lot of work we did with Huron Consulting. It's resulted in a major reorganization of the provost office and the vice president for student life. We've hired some people into already existing positions. So these aren't new positions, but we've hired some expert like Karen Goose that Chuck referenced is a recruiting specialist and expert. Somebody in student success, a new registrar. I mean, almost across the board in these functions, we've hired new people, and we've put a lot of resources to this. We've revamped our scholarship, how we scholarship, the whole scholarship plan. Some of these things are going to be instituted this coming fall. Some will have to wait till 2021. So we're in the middle of implementation, if you will. And one of the big things we were trying to do, since the proclivity of Kansas high school graduates is not to go on to higher education in the state of Kansas, is to attract out-of-state students. So folks on the call may know that at KU, for instance, they're 60-40, 60 in-state, 40 out. That's their rough number. Our rough number is 80-20. And we've never relied much on the out-of-state student. And we think in the future, to build up in-person enrollment and online enrollment, that we need to go after the out-of-state students. So pre-COVID, we were seeing the metrics were showing the success in the things that we had implemented. And we're going to do even more of that in the next fiscal year, not 2021, but 2022. So for the next class after this fall's class. So we think we're making progress. And I'll let Chuck describe what happened after COVID, because some of that, we got robbed from some of that progress, as has I think every university in the country.
Yes. So the good news is that the changes that we were making were already having a positive impact. So the numbers coming in, the numbers of applications to the university were significantly up. And that's with just one recruitment cycle with some of the new things we're doing. So that was really very, very encouraging. Unfortunately, when COVID hit, it also hit enrollments across the country for all universities. And we're no exception. So we do expect to be down. We're hopeful that the incoming freshman class will be only slightly down. That's the way it looks right now. But the overall, we expect to be maybe as much as 6% down in the fall. And that's a trend that's been going on for 5 or 6 years. And I think again, the good news is we're seeing those signs that the aircraft carrier's turning, that we're you have to have several strong first-year classes in a row to get the university enrollment turned around. And we think that we're really getting there with the changes that are happening. In particular, the reaching out to people out of state, really working to attract out of state students, as President Meyer said, and changing the way we do scholarshiping, and even changing our price point in certain out of state markets. So all of that is exciting. But again, the truth is that we're going to be down again this fall.
And Travis, I might add to that, alumni are always asking how they can help. Well, about half of our alumni live out of state. And if every K-Stater that lived out of state could share with us the name of a prospective student that might be interested in Kansas State University, we would really welcome that. And we're working with Karen Goose on how to make and facilitate that much easier. And we had just started inviting prospective students to our out-of-state events. We've always done that in-state, but we had just started doing that out-of-state. And I love the story in Chicago. We had an event and we had a young woman come with her mother, and she was trying to decide between a Big Ten school and K-State. She was invited to this event, and that evening she made the announcement that she was coming to K-State. So we know out-of-staters can make a big difference. So I'd put a plug in for having people share names with us.
And I think just really quickly, if I could just follow up, there's a question in the chat about graduate enrollment. And I do want to point out that, yes, we are seeing increases in graduate enrollment. Without the pandemic, it would have been a significant increase. With it, we still expect to be somewhat up in graduate students.
And don't forget, everybody, the international students, for a variety of reasons, that number will be down. And that's, for us, a pretty significant number that we have here on campus. And it'll be off as well due to COVID, also possibly due to some implementation of new visa restrictions and so forth. So we work that as hard as we can work it, but some of that is totally beyond our control. I will just, on an up note, we graduated 3,300 students this last spring, just a couple of weeks ago. If you want to grow, you got to bring in more than 3,300. Well, we're not at that point in this whole enrollment management plan to bring in more than 3,300. So that gives you kind of an idea of what these big classes you've had as they go through the so-called snake. You got to replace them with same or bigger if you're going to grow. We can do that. We're convinced we can do that. One of our alums is convinced we can do that because he gave us $5 million cash to help accelerate this process. Think about that for a minute. 5 million cash to do the kind of things that state funding or tuition ought to fund. He said, no, I want you to accelerate this. Here's my money. Unbelievable. So he has a lot of faith in our team here. And he has a lot of faith in you, the alumni, and others that are going to contribute to this in very meaningful and profound ways. And we thank you for that.
So to the question of what alumni can do, if anyone in the chat wants to match that, you can note that in the comments, and we would take your contact information, and I'm sure the president would probably just leave the chat and call you, and that would be the right thing to do. So
no, we'd have a parade, actually.
Well, one last, I think on kind of COVID, and then I know we had a few other topics we wanted to cover, but I think maybe the natural last question to ask in terms of university impact flowing from enrollment and somewhat flowing, President Myers, from your comment about private support as well, is just budgeting and thinking about the mix of the financial picture for the university. And obviously this is not unique to K-State or unique to Kansas. This too is a COVID effect. But what does it look like? What can alumni do to help encourage policymakers in addition to helping support the university through our own gifts to help through what is, obviously, as with everything else in the world, probably going to be, a leaner time than some other times have been.
Thank you, Travis. I'll start, and Chuck, if you don't mind, you can make sure you can fill in the things that I forget for whatever reason. But make no mistake, this is a really tough time at K-State for our budget. Just this fiscal year, which ends, as everybody knows, on 30 June, we're without $45 million. 9 of that is athletics, 9 million is. Those were revenue producing entities that didn't produce any revenue because there was nobody here to use them. For instance, the rec center, for instance, housing and dining, where we had to give back over $8 million to students, refunds for the time they weren't here, to the child development center, to the student union, to Lafine Health. And yet there's expenses, right? People expenses. So we've done some emergency furloughs. There will be layoffs coming, and there will be administrative furloughs, which will be more along the line of if you're in a unit, you may be asked to take off 3 days a year, for instance. And so all those things have terrific impact on people, but we're doing it to try to balance this budget with tuition being down because enrollment will be down, and because we're anticipating that as the state tax revenues will be a lot less. They're anticipating over $1 billion less in state tax revenues because of the economic impact of this virus. We anticipate they're not going to be able to give us our full budget in the next fiscal year. We don't think anything will happen in this fiscal year, but and hopefully not, because we're almost at the end of it. But for next fiscal year, we anticipate being down again in state revenues, and they may call money back. So we've baked that into our budget numbers, their estimates, of course, and so people are really hurting. If you talk to your professor friends or staff on campus, this is not an easy time for anybody. It's a really tough budget position. We also kept tuition flat, and for next year, and we did that on a principle of, with this economic downturn and so many families having economic and financial distress, perhaps losing their jobs, whatever, that it just didn't seem like the right time to ask them to pay more for education. That's part of, I think, our land grant mission is to provide access for all. And you can't do that if you keep raising prices. We are absolutely justified in raising tuition, probably 3%. We didn't do it. I'm not saying we're not going to do it next year. I don't know about that at this point. I think KU will follow us in that. I think the other 4 regent universities will increase their tuition. They're at price points right now that are below us anyway, so they probably have a little more room to do that. But I thought I'd just mention that as a way forward. Dr. Tabor, you probably want to add something about the budget piece.
The only thing I'll add is that in addition to that, we have some new expenses associated with responding to COVID-19. As you might imagine, all of the planning we were talking about earlier and the need for technology, it requires some investment. So for example, we need to go through all our classrooms this summer, and we're refitting the classrooms to have the capacity to do the things I talked about earlier, to have simulcast Zoom capacity in a classroom. And all of our classrooms are going to be refitted. So that's just one example of the additional investments that we're having to do right now. And these investments will help us going forward. They're going to position the university to be very effective going forward, but they really are difficult right now with this budget picture.
Well, I know we've on COVID specifically, thank you both. We've talked about it's a serious topic. We've talked about some very serious aspects of it. So I don't mean this to be too abrupt of a pivot, but a personal question for all of you as well. One other thing that this pandemic has created is a lot of at-home time. And I know you've all been working very hard, but perhaps there are hobbies or new discoveries at home or ways of communicating with grandkids. If you all would want to take a minute to share, I think the personal side is important as well. What have you learned from COVID-19 that has nothing to do with COVID-19 and hopefully has something to do with family and community if you've been spending time a little bit differently these days?
I've had a lot of fun with my grandchildren, and our granddaughter that just finished first grade has learned how to calendar 1 hour Zoom calls that we would do every day for a while. It was helping mom deal with the third graders, so I could spend time with the granddaughters. And a very dear friend of mine just sent me an incredible book that is very appropriate, and I've already read it to the grandchildren, and it's titled "The World Needs More Purple People." And I can't think of a more appropriate title for me to read to my grandchildren. So that's been a lot of fun.
So I've picked up an old hobby years and years, and I mean years ago, decades ago. I was a musician back in college. I played in bands. I'm a guitarist. I write songs, and I picked that up again. And in fact, I'm putting out a new album later this year.
And so, once I hid the knives from Mary Jo, we've been getting along just fine. It's kind of fun to be with somebody. We'll have our 55th wedding anniversary this Friday, but we've really enjoyed our time together. And it's, when you're hunkered down, pretty much just the two of you for 3 months or so. I'm not sure what we thought going into it, but we love it actually. But my only little hobby is I sit looking out at windows at this beautiful tree scenery as you look up towards Anderson. Dense foliage and so forth, and lots of birds, and beautiful birds, and I wanted to see more of them, so I went and bought a bird feeder at Menards and put it out there. And then, of course, I had to get the Cliff Notes version of Birds of the Midwest so I could more accurately identify what the heck I was watching. So, and right here at this little station, I also have my binoculars when my eyes aren't good enough to look at the detail of some of these winged creatures. So that's my little hobby right now. I think it's probably going to stick. Actually, I never thought much about this, but there's a lot of nature around here right now because the camp is so empty. So it's fun to do it.
Yeah.
I think there's a rebuttal coming. Hold it.
It's also the big bad wolf. He forgot to mention that.
Oh, so we do a lot of, all the grandchildren in Virginia. So we do a lot of reading and playing games back there with the whole family. Mary Jo reads to one of our 3-year-old, and I have a role in the story of the big bad wolf. I'm I'll huff and I'll puff. I mean, I get really gruff and stuff, and she giggles. And so, yeah, we try to stay as connected as we can, but anyway.
Mary Jo, I don't know if a rebuttal is necessary. He says you're getting along swimmingly. So maybe this is the moment to chime in, or maybe not. I don't know, but it seems like things are going well.
Yes, they are. We did a facetious video with our family, though, where I held up signs behind him saying, I feel like I'm in prison. And we had a lot of fun with that. But basically, yes, with our separate lives, we've just haven't spent this much time together, and it's given us a vision of the future that it's working out really well. I'm renewing his contract for another year on our anniversary. So it's
Very
all
good.
been good. We're very
Very good.
blessed.
Very good. Well, we have a little time left, and we do have a couple of other things I know that we want to talk about, but thank you all so much first for going really in depth on COVID and everything happening at K-State. I know everyone on really appreciates it. And we're going to get to some other good news topics at the end, but I do want to address another serious topic that we would naturally address with this group, but that we've also had some questions about in advance. You know, the really senseless and brutal death of George Floyd in Minneapolis has prompted a national outcry and strengthened a social justice movement across the country. And I know that's true in a lot of different places. I've seen video of protests and marches, peaceful protests and marches across the country in Manhattan, New York, but also pretty large groups of people in Manhattan, Kansas. So be interested in, I know there have been official statements from the university and the Alumni Association and everything else, but certainly President Myers or anybody who would want to speak to this, what can we do, and what's the university doing to listen on these topics and really to move forward in meaningful and productive ways.
Well, I'll start. Chuck and I have both been very, very involved in this, and other folks that are on this call. But first, I think we started from a position where we've got good leadership here at K-State, working all sorts of issues around discrimination, race, diversity, inclusion, all those sorts of things. So we've had really good dialogue, interrupted a little bit by the fact we weren't connected this spring like we would normally be connected. But and then we saw what happened across the nation. And I think it reminds us that social injustice has to be dealt with. It's not been dealt with satisfactorily. And that I think a lot of people, just don't realize that racism is alive and well. It is alive and well. And if you don't see it, it probably means you're not of a marginalized group or minority group. And but we can't ignore that. Even those that have privilege cannot ignore the fact that some people are discriminated against and or hear racial slurs as we go forward. So the good news is we were listening. We are acting now on some of the things we've heard from the Black Student Union when they started their Black at K-State Twitter thread. We're trying to find the nuggets in there that are useful that we can do something about. We're fortunate. We just did a recent climate survey. Those results are just starting to be unveiled. We had really good participation and really good participation from the students as well in the climate survey. And we're going to try to unpack that to understand what was being said there and how can that add to other things we have to do going forward. And then I think most importantly, like all these things, if you're going to make progress, you can do it. You got to measure it. So we've got to figure out ways to measure our progress, not just have a bunch of jabber. And so that's what we're doing. We've got I got a list too long to read to you right now of things that we're considering, and most of which we'll probably do, and they'll be rolled out over time. I just have the final piece. Everything we do will be done with involvement of faculty, staff, and students. So it's not going to be, nobody is smart enough to figure this out by themselves. So we're going to include a large group of people to help us figure our way through this.
And I know the Alumni Association wants to continue to listen to our students, but also our alumni. And we will be right there with the university doing everything we can to listen so we can move forward in a very positive way. And Nabia Kazi Hutchins is our chair this coming year for the board. And I know this is very important to her. And we've already started some discussions on how we can look to address this tragedy and how we can move forward in a positive way.
I would only add to this that I think this is an incredible opportunity It's a tragedy. It's a horrific incident, and it's compounded on top of a series of horrific incidents that really show us how much structural racism there is in our society. But this is an opportunity, if we do listen, and and if we take action, and it's an opportunity for us to really make a difference. And so I'm looking forward to being part of that.
I think one of our obligations, and I've said this for the whole years I've been here, is that when somebody graduates with a K-State diploma, hopefully we've done all we can in the classroom, out of the classroom, leadership experiences, other experiences, that they graduate, valuing being culturally competent, culturally aware, culturally competent, and then valuing what inclusion brings to anything, any task, because that's the world they're going to go into. All the major corporations, I served on 4 boards of major corporations, and inclusion, I mean, that's how they worked, and it was valued, it was measured, it was rewarded with compensation or deductions, depending on what your group did. And so we need to produce these world-ready people, and we're a long way from being as complete about that as we need to be.
So Mr. President, just one quick follow-up. And bricks and mortar are not a solution to the problem that we're discussing, but I know bricks and mortar surrounding a multicultural student center have been discussed, and things are moving forward there. And that is an important part of a much broader plan that you all have. But that's maybe something tangible that alumni will see as they're coming onto campus. Can you just give a quick update on sort of timing and where that stands?
So I drive by it most every day for 2 reasons. One is to make sure the contractors don't beat up the nice brickwork and concrete that we have around the site, but 2, to see how it's coming along, because the intent is to stay on the timeline we're on to open this in November. And that's our intent. And it'll be probably around a weekend where there are people on campus that can join us for that. But a little background, this is something that was had students had been given expectations this would have been done. Nothing was being done when I got here, nothing. So thank goodness for Jim Bob Morris, a Native American student football player who has done well in business, who gave us the signature gift for that multicultural student center. It'll be called the Morris Family Multicultural Student Center. And we had other support, of course. So it is coming along, and it's taking the kind of shape you see in the pictures right now, from the outline of the steel and so forth. And I hope people are excited about this. A building, a structure does not replace other things, but symbols are important too. Just like Anderson Hall is a symbol for our university, we hope this is a symbol of our commitment to doing better at making this a place where everybody's valued, has a voice, and can be heard.
So I appreciate everything you've all shared on both of these topics. They're serious topics, and certainly there's been a lot of challenging news in our country over the last several months. But it feels to me like there are glimmers of good news in all the things you've been discussing, from the efforts of faculty and staff and students through all the various events over the last several months. But I want to give an opportunity. We have just a couple minutes left to end even on a more forward-looking and optimistic note. Normally in these kinds of events, in a different environment, and maybe if we were all in person, these are good news events. We have a script with a list of all the great things that are going on at K-State that we want to be sure to share with alumni and friends. And I know, even though there have been challenges over the last few months, there are still very good things happening at K-State that we want to share with alumni and friends. And so I just open it up to any or all of you. If there are related or unrelated things that you want to be sure people know about as we close, that I don't know if you saw the YouTube show Some Good News that was going around during the early days of the pandemic, but let's do some good news from K-State, and just throw open the floor for anything that.
Here's some good news. Here's some good news, Travis. I'll take us to one of our 3 pillars or our 3 missions, research. So one of our researchers became a member of, oh, come on, Chuck. What am I?
National Academy.
Data
National
Sciences
Academy of Sciences.
became a member. And you may remember, for those that have been around long enough to remember, this was one of the metrics in our 2025 plan, and we could never recruit or didn't have any here at K-State, but we were measuring ourselves against other land grants with how many Academy members we had. Well, one of our own researchers who's been researching here for a couple of decades, Barbara Valent, who is a plant pathologist, and expertise lies in a wheat fungus and a rice fungus called wheat blast rice blast, was made a member. It's like winning the Oscar if you're an actor, except I think it's even more profound. And so that is something to celebrate. And I'll just say our research enterprise is making more progress this year than any year in the last 10. More progress than any $11.3 million grant to folks associated with vet med to help with defeating these viruses like this virus, the coronavirus, from the National Institutes of Health. So we've got a couple of big, I think over almost $15 million in the last a month or so from National Institutes of Health for some of the research we're already doing. So research is a good story right now at K-State.
I might add that we're thrilled that we will be honoring two veterinarians, Dr. Jerry Jacks and Dr. Nancy Jacks, with the Alumni Excellence Award, and that will take place in November. And many of you, those names will be familiar, especially just most recently, the documentary that was done on their work on Ebola. And when they were selected, we had no idea what we were going to be dealing with as a country. So we're excited to honor these two outstanding graduates. And I want to also say, Travis, we are so fortunate to have you as a graduate of Kansas State University. And we really appreciate your time today. It means a lot, and your support's always been there for us. So thank you.
Well, as I said, I'm very happy to do it. It required no travel. So this is about the easiest ask anyone could make, but certainly happy to do it. And Provost Tabor, no pressure, but I will throw it to you for some good news.
Sure.
Your other option, based on the questions we've been getting in the chat, is there
To grab my guitar.
do that, or you can give some good news. It's your choice.
Well, since singing and guitar doesn't do very well over Zoom, I'm gonna go to some good news, and I'll just share that this has been another banner year for student national awards at K-State. And I don't know, maybe you are fully aware, but as a relative newcomer to the university and someone who's been in higher education all my life, I was very aware when I first came to K-State, and have continued to be so proud of the fact that K-State is one of the leading universities in the country for producing major national awards for students, fellowships and awards. So we had another great year, and I don't have time. We're already past time to go sort of down the list, but you can check out easily from our webpage our student award winners this year.
That's great. Thank you all very much. President Myers, Provost Tabor, and Amy, thanks so much for all of your thoughts and everything you shared. And to everyone watching, thanks for being a part of this first Wildcat chat. We know there will be many more. You can find this program. It's been recorded. It will be available on YouTube for you to watch again over and over if you'd like, or more likely to share it with your friends and fellow K-Staters and get this information out there. And we hope that you will do that. So thank you again very much, and keep an eye on our website at the Alumni Association for future events. It's www.kstate.com. Thank you all so much. Have a safe summer, and we hope to see you on campus in the fall. Thanks.
Go Cats.
Go Cats.